Good afternoon, everyone. So it's I'm standing between you and the break, I guess. But what I'll try to do is talk a little bit about what we are doing at Techcombank and a little bit of introduction. So do you have the clicker with me? Yeah, okay. I got it. Okay. So for those who have not heard of Techcombank, so a little bit of information. We are Vietnam's largest private bank. We have close to 12,000 employees. We make more than $1 billion, US dollars, not Singapore dollars, more than $1 billion in profit. So we are not a small company, but we are not, again, big. We are not in the big league. We are in what I call the sweet spot. So we've got around, we are the first largest private bank in Vietnam. We are the first private bank in Vietnam to cross $1 billion in profit. And we've been doing it for the past 3 years. So this year also, our target is 1.2 billion, and we already hit 600 million in the first 6 months. So, and if you look at the genesis, right, and if you look at the lot of stats put in here, our ROA is pretty impressive. For those who are from the banking industry or for those who are with data, I think you will find these numbers pretty strong. So our capital adequacy ratio, it's close to 15.6%, more than it's on par with DBS. We recently, in 2024, we won the best bank in Vietnam by Global Finance. So pretty much a well-established bank, started 30 years back in Vietnam's parlance, pretty old, but in our parlance, pretty new, but overall a good story to say. So this is what we have from a Techcombank perspective. Now, Vietnam. So it was very interesting. So a little bit of backstory. So when I'm a Singaporean, so and I'm not from NTU, I'm from NUS, by the way. So and when I got the offer to move to Vietnam, I was wondering what's Vietnam got in store. But I was pleasantly surprised, and I can talk from first-hand experience, that this country has changed, is changing, and will be changing even more. And primarily driven by the fact that, I don't know how many of you follow, the population is 100 million, and most of the population is less, and when I say most, I'll give you, I'm an analytics guy, so I have to give you the number. 67% of the population is less than 35 years old. It's just the reverse of what Singapore is. Exactly, if you do that, right? Our population is this way around. So it's phenomenal. So consumerism was on the rise. It's a growing middle class. It's an emerging market. And if you look at how, I mean, honestly, I went there in 2006 first time, where I moved from the hotel. If you drove for 2 kilometers, you would get farms and fields. Now, from that same hotel, if you drive for 20 to 30 kilometers, there are only buildings everywhere and skyscrapers. That's where, and the transformation is visible. I was speaking to a couple of you during lunch, and I was saying, during COVID, we were acquiring 50,000 new customers every day. 50,000 new customers every day. We have 13 million customers, retail and this thing. And during COVID, when the whole economy was locked down, we were acquiring 50,000 new customers every single day. That is the power. And that's why this economy. So in Singapore, where I worked for most of my career, to get 2-3 customers, and for those who are in the banking industry, new customers, because this is a very mature market. It's deeply penetrated, right? We all have DBS, POSB, UOB, OCBC, name the bank, Stan Chart, Citibank, probably 5 to 6 customers, 5 to 6 accounts. But there, it's just growing. So that's why you please take whatever I say with the right essence. So it's not that it's a growing market. So it's a very different perspective for you to have. So yeah, so again, I don't know how many of you follow the latest economic information. Vietnam is now the second largest GDP. Not per capita, but GDP per se, right? After Indonesia. I mean, it's close to Thailand. It will overtake Thailand by this year. So in ASEAN, so Indonesia is our largest, the biggest, this thing. Thailand is second. And then now Vietnam will overtake Thailand also. So that's why it's pretty fast growing market. Now, that was my introduction. That had nothing to do with AI, nothing to do with analytics. So what am I going to talk about? I think the presenters before me talked, a lot of them talked about different forms of analytics. What I'm going to focus on is on GenAI. I think that's pretty hot right now and everyone's doing it. And I want to talk about what we have done in Techcombank. What have we moved the needle? Again, I'm just going to give you practical use case examples of what we have done and how it has actually helped us. Now, I'll give a little bit of introduction. Some you might already be familiar, but again, if you look at GenAI, the concept of GenAI, I think I'm being a data scientist myself, and being a programmer myself, I find it very hard when people use these terms interchangeably. GenAI, AI, machine learning, deep learning. People use these terms, it's the same. And it's okay. It's okay. But for me, as a purist, right, I truly want to understand what, if you ask me what it is a subset. And that's why I hope this kind of captures what GenAI truly is. It is, and if people want to understand more, of course, you can attend the NTU course. Well, I don't recommend the NTU. NUS is better, but no. But the key thing to note here is, if tomorrow, if there's a takeaway, please understand that GenAI is a subset of the overall AI universe. And GenAI is not AI on the whole. There are more statistical models. There is probabilistic model, machine learning, multiple other things. A simple regression model is not GenAI. So, and we have been doing modeling for ages, and we'll talk about that later. Now, I don't need to tell you we are in the midst of an AI revolution. Otherwise, I think unless you have been living under a stone, we would all know that we're probably going through what I call history. We are actually going through history. We'll tell our kids and grandkids, oh, when GPT was formed. So what I would say is, rather than AI revolution, we are going through something called as a cognitive revolution. For the first time in the human history, till now, machines have come and automated physical labor. Right now, what is happening is it's automating the brain part. And that is something that we all need to be aware of. So till now, it has not happened. Till now, if you look at what has happened is, you bought in tractors, which automated farming. You bought in machines that automated the human physical labor. But humans are always there to do what we call intelligent work. And what is happening now is computers are coming, especially with the advent of LLMs, are saying that I can tell you what you're doing is not intelligent enough. And that is scary. And why is that scary? Dare I say 75% or even 80%. And again, this was a McKinsey study done. 80% of people are doing what we think is intelligent, but which is not intelligent, including a lot of us, including me in this room. So that's the reality, and that's the truth. And if we sat here and thought that everyone is safe, the reality is, it's not that it will replace us. The point that you need to understand is, you need to elevate your level of intelligence. What will be normal intelligence today is going to be here. And that's so we need to compete at this level. So till now, if we had thought that we were good enough doing stuff and getting away with this, great. But that's not going to be the case in future. So wave one, predictive existed. Predictive, I think, for those who have been doing analytics, predictive has existed since foregone. So we used to look at the past to predict the future. Now, generative is what we are going through. In a few years, dare I say, it will be autonomous. And we are not far. And again, look, I'm not a believer. I'm not in the camp of, if you ask me, are you in the Elon Musk camp? Are you on Ray Vitale's camp? Honestly, I'm in a camp where I strongly believe AI is going to be good for humanity. But again, obviously, when they've discovered the fusion and fission, they never thought it will be used in atom bombs, right? So again, I'm in the side that I strongly believe any technology can be used for good. But again, will we reach singularity? Will humans get replaced? Honestly, I don't know. That's the honest answer. I don't know. But I strongly believe that we as a human race will need to elevate our level of intelligence to stay competitive. So what we thought was basic, like knowing countries and capitals. Once upon a time, I'm sure we've all gone through the era where your test of knowledge or your test of credibility would be how much you knew or how much you memorized. And that is going to get challenged a lot. And if you look at these waves 2, wave 3, wave 4 will be very, very short. Wave 1 to wave 2 was pretty large, but wave 2, wave 3, wave 4 will be, and the subsequent waves will be much faster. That's mine. Now, that was a bit of an overview, this thing. Now, let's talk a little bit about a large language model. Like I told you, my talk is about generative AI, what we're doing at Techcombank, right? So, large language model, as the word suggests, right? First, there are 3 words to it. there is something called as language model. There is something called language modeling. There is something called large language modeling. I think you need to understand the context is very important. People kind of generally say LLM, LLMs, etc., without understanding. So, like I said, I'm a data scientist, and we need to understand these things in detail, right? If you look at language models have existed for 50 to 60 years. It's not now. NLP models, speech to text, people have tried. So how many of you have heard of the term neural networks? Show of hands. Yeah, you all, I can see most of you have heard. So neural networks have existed for decades. So there used to be something called a CNN, then RNN, recursive neural networks, multiple different types. So language models as a study to study patterns, complexity, has existed for quite some time. Language modeling is when, with advent of neural networks, then became much more important. Now, large language modeling, what has happened is we have moved the needle in terms of parameters, in terms of training, and in terms of, I'll talk about something called as transformers that has truly transformed what has happened. So if you look at, I'll give you a simple example, maybe too much of technical nuances. So go ahead, right? The next word will, what do you predict? So typically, if you have two choices, you will say make or I will. And the second, once you choose make, that's the highest, it's all probabilistic. It's not deterministic. It's probabilistic, highest probability. Go ahead, make my, and then you have options. It'll say, go ahead, make my. And then it'll say day or lunch. And this, the last is where you should understand. Both are right. Make my day, make my lunch. Both are right. And that's where, it works again with probability. That's what it does. What it does is with the highest increasing order of probability that it does. As I told you, these statistical LLMs have existed for more than, when you look back, 90s looks like too far time, actually 35 years, which looks pretty old. So I was in college then, so it was pretty old, this thing. But if you look at what has happened in the last 10 years, neural networks to language trained models to pre-trained to large language, this exponential growth has come. I don't know how many of you are aware. In 2017, a team under Google Brain published a paper called Attention is All You Need. It was published under name Vaswani et al. This was published in 2017. And that was a seminal moment for a lot of us, including me. I got to read that paper only in 2018, towards the end, 2019 to be fair. So I read that paper almost 2 years after it's published. But what essentially it has done is, it has started saying that our ability to earlier rely on the distance of words, which basically said I needed to know the past words to understand the context to predict the future, that got eliminated. So it's a very, very important, term. So transformers, that's the birth of transformers, right? So if you want, I would encourage you to read. So if there's one takeaway from there, I'll request 1 or 2 takeaways from my presentation. The first is that transformers truly transformed how large language modeling was done. And the word language model is a bit of a misnomer. So we have something called SLM, which I've not put in here, which is also small language, but the word language modeling is primarily used for NLP. So that's why it started with that. That's why they use the word language model. But predominantly, it is used to generate. It transforms, right? It generates. Now, if you look at how GPT does, right? I think we all know this. So it uses the transformer decoder blocks. Now, I'm sure you have all seen this example of how GPT drives. And I think ChatGPT has truly transformed how people have started to look at what AI can do, because it put AI on the map. It brought AI to fingertips. It brought AI to our mobile phones. It brought AI everywhere, right? But underlying this is, as I told you, the technology called transformer. And transformer is the one that truly made this whole ChatGPT thing very interesting. Now, in Vietnam, we have something called as WinAI research, where we take all these models, and of course, Vietnam has its own constraints, primarily driven by language, not least by language. So we take it, and then we kind of then fine-tune it for the local nuances. So we have a team So I have around 42 data scientists. I have a team of around 260 people, out of which 42 of them are data scientists. Around 35 of them are PhD holders from across the world. So they work with universities there to kind of take all these foundational models, as I would say, and then fine-tune it, and then customize it for Vietnam's context and Vietnam's nuance. That's very, very important. So that's why we work with a company called WinAI Research, and even in my division, we've got a AI Labs research team. It is headed by a former Google DeepMind person. So all this, we have to continuously keep doing. Now, this is a very interesting slide, because if you look at the whole GPT-3, like I told you, the first transformer paper was published in 2017, but the GPT revolution started in around 2019, 2020. But since then, look at the amount of work the number of models that has come in. I don't know about you, because I follow it very closely, because we look at this, and this is my job also, right? So I need to, I've just lost track, to be very honest with you. So if most of you are in the data analytics field, I'm sure you should also. There is an overwhelming amount of models being released almost every month. And now the question is, which one to use for what purpose? It's more become like there are plethora of choices available. How do I kind of handle this? And I think that's the overarching question. And how do I put it to good use? If you look at, I mean, everyone from Mistral to Llama to Google, oh my God. So I mean, and I think primarily also driven by the fact that everyone wants to get a head start on to build this foundational model, so that they now say we are the best of the best of the best. Now coming back to Techcombank's perspective, right? From a Techcombank, what have we done? I just gave you the overview of how large language model, what is GenAI, etc. The first tool or utility, I would call it the product, I'm still not an agent, is called a translator called ZICOI. Zik in Vietnamese, D-I-C-H, Zik means translate. So the word Zik is a play on its name. Oi is deer in Vietnamese. So if someone you generally call Oi is deer, so ZICOI is the name of it. But what did we do? Primarily, one of the biggest challenges being a bank and a regulated bank, and the boss, the CEO is German, the management team is a mix of Vietnamese, Singaporean, German, French. We have a multicultural management team. But 90%, 95% of employees are Vietnamese. And we had to communicate both in English and Vietnamese documents. And this is all our local bank challenges, right? And typically, my assistant used to take this document, go to Google, cut, paste, if there's in Word, or because there is management documents that need to be provided for our EXCO meetings. She will sit, then cut line by line, cut, paste, translate, and used to keep doing that. And in Vietnam, everything, unfortunately, that's the drawback of an emerging market, is still wet signature. There is no e-sign. Even if I signed, you have to electronically print it out, then I have to physically sign. Even if I signed it. So these are nuances. Don't ask me why, but we still exist in that world. But then, if I have to sign something, I need the translation. So every time she has to translate. So imagine, there used to be a job for translators in the bank. They were paid less, but still there was a job. Now there's no more job for them. Because all these tools, now we've got Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and PDF also we have started to. We send the document, and now no more, we built our own model based on multi-language, MBART, for those who are familiar, and it's stored in-house. So we don't even send it to Google. So there is full privacy and security. And since it's built in-house and maintained, you might look like a small thing for you, but for our bank, it was a big win. Just yesterday, before I left from Hanoi, I landed here. The team who was monitoring this told me, in 1.5 months since we launched it in the beginning of this year. Last year was in beta. Jan we launched, and to a small team in March we launched to a big team. So March, April, May. So 2 months, 2 months, 1 million documents have been scanned and gone through this. And people are talking about how do we measure productivity? Today, 3 people who are doing, I mean, it might sound funny, who are full-time employed to translate documents are doing something else. And those are the things, right? So this is one. Second, we have a chatbot called Smarty. Smarty was, again, it's entirely trained on the bank's documents. Again, we used Llama 2, which is Meta. So if you look at each of the models, what we have done is we picked and chose. As I told you, I showed you a chart that has tons of models. So we said, okay, for this purpose, now how do we make these choices? So these are choices that we made. Again, because we need to have a team of data scientists with smart people to understand which model for what purpose. So that's what we did. And this is extremely helpful for onboarding purposes. What we did is we started training for anyone who came and who wanted to know the bank. So it became the bank's Google go-to. So Smarty started chatting with everybody who was onboarded. And not only that, now we have extended to the branches and the front line. So we have 365 branches in Vietnam. Today we publish a lot of interest rates, we publish product, etc. Every day, because banks change interest rates, volatility is there, or pricing is there, or a new product launch is there. Earlier, it used to be tons of documents that are mailed, and the frontline didn't know. We load it to Smarty, everything is trained, so they'll know what are the latest product offerings. It's like asking Google or GPT, ChatGPT. So we built our own chatbot, and everybody's got this in branches, etc. Earlier, people used to, and again, just to give you a measure of metric where it has translated to value, the time spent for customers has increased by 77%. Earlier, it was when if an average branch manager, because they will say, let me go find a document, etc., their ability, their productivity, the time, their ability to have meaningful conversations has truly gone up. And how has this helped? Like I told you, this has really helped push revenue, pushed our numbers. And that's where I think we are able to spend more time with customers. Again, it has been fine-tuned with our data. It's available. It's English speaking. We got the Vietnamese version also out. So again, it also helps to compose messages and mails. So because based on the bank products for the front line, if there is a mail to be sent to customers, it helps to create emails also. A huge productivity improvement. The third hack that we did using the GenAI is something called as Code GPT. Now, again, these are what everyone, now if you look at Copilot, Microsoft, all these, everybody has started launching. But we have been using this for the past 4 months, 5 months to be fair. What we did, the first thing is we fed, we trained, and then we used, and we benchmarked it. And then the beauty is we wanted the code to have our standards, right? Because the problem is when you start applying global standards, might not be applicable to you, or might not have your config, or might not have your structure, or might, most importantly, not have your metadata. Now we customized it. And again, statistics. In the beginning of the year, the CIO, my colleague, and me, and my chief digital officer, my colleagues, we had put in for a request for half-yearly renewal for 65 developers. With Code GPT, now we have removed those need for 65 developers in our half-year review. And that's a huge amount of saving for the bank, direct saving. So these are all practical examples that I'm telling you that is translating to us. And now what we can see, developer productivity has gone up by 33%. These are all real numbers, right? These are not fictional numbers, and we are seeing that. We are a bank of 12,000 and we want to hire. But now we are very clear where to hire, what to hire. We are re-looking at our whole hiring process and hiring only where we need. So we are not hiring just for the sake of hiring. So huge productivity improvement. It also helps to translate codes, etc. So there is a huge amount of productivity gain on this also. Again, look, no tool is perfect. And I think the speakers before also spoke about hallucination, etc. You just need to be aware, right? I think it's not a silver bullet, but more importantly, I think you all need to be aware that there are limitations as with any tools. I'm going to share, this is my final slide. I want to share my learnings, our learnings. Like I said, this is a journey that the bank undertook, etc. First, most important, we started this journey more than a year back. I'm showing you results of the last 4 to 5 months, but we started, and I'm proud to say we were one of the first banks in the region to start experimenting. I know here OCBC has done a lot of stuff, UOB, and others are doing. But in Vietnam, no one else started. And 1 year back, we already started. Start small, but we should start. What we have seen, many people talk about GenAI solving world hunger. We have not seen GenAI solve world hunger. We have not seen GenAI create, what we are seeing, more of a productivity enhancer. The key is to unlock value creation. And that is very, very important. And that for me, as the Chief Data Officer, one of my biggest goals is, if you implement this, how much money can you make? Can this GenAI deliver so much of value? And how do you measure that value? I think that is key. The biggest mistake we all do is we put so much of stuff into production and you don't measure value. For me, every model, whether it is a regression model or marketing model or a credit risk model, every model has to have an associated value. We measure model value, we measure model performance, drift, and then whether it actually degrades so closely. And we are okay for models to fail in production. We have a GenAI council at the highest level in the bank where the CEO sits. He chairs the GenAI council, right? So I'm part of that. So we have a team of the chief digital officer, CIO, so 5 from the management team sit on the board of the GenAI council because we want to see the impact across the organization. This is not a fancy POC. We are not doing it as a IT-led or a data-led or a digital-led initiative. We are looking to transform the entire bank. So the CEO sits and then says, how can we improve frontline productivity? How can we improve staff benefit? How can we talk about HR impact? What about ethics? I think the previous speaker spoke tons about it before that and all. Everything is looked at a bank's level. And again, like I told you, we have millions of models. And as I speak, I think a new model might get released today or tomorrow. But you need to build a foundational model that becomes your bedrock. As much as they say everyone said don't just trust the black box. I couldn't agree more. But you also need to understand how to use the model, which models to choose, etc. And that comes with knowledge. Again, I don't need to, it's probably self-explanatory, create a marketplace for specific models that can be reused. Explainability, model management becomes that much more critical. I think we also learned, we are not perfect, but our learnings are improving. And as I said at the beginning, right, I spoke about a very narrow, GenAI is just a subset of this whole AI puzzle. We have used it primarily for productivity improvement. What we are looking at, and tomorrow we might use it for more use cases, I have not spoken about, there are 33 use cases we are experimenting in production. Probably in the next CDOIQ APAC forum, I can give you a much more vivid description of right now what we have seen is primarily in the productivity and what the examples that I shared with you. But we are experimenting a lot more. It's not stopped. And we are doing it at scale with this thing. So I will stop at that. I hope I left 2-3 minutes, but thank you for listening to my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for opening our eyes to the Vietnam scene. I think that's a good eye opener. So anyway, I got 2 questions.
Sure.
Yeah. So the first question was, why did Techcombank choose to build all these applications in-house instead of, let's say, using commercial products?
Sure. So commercial products need to be taken, but it still needs to be customized, number one. And our biggest problem in Vietnam is language, as I told you. So even if you take Microsoft Copilot today, you can't just use it out of the box. Even ChatGPT does a lot of tasks, but there's no product that takes that you can use out of the shelf. And in a market like Vietnam, where context is all and language is even more important, hence it kind of forced us to do it that way.
Okay, thank you. Next question, many of what you've shown us just now was for your internal bank users. So how about some of the plans you have for your end users, the customers?
Good question. And that's why I specifically showed you productivity, because we are experimenting. Like I told you, we already have 4 or 5 use cases in anti-money laundering, in our underwriting cases, etc. But these are fringe cases. We haven't created the value that I would have liked to sit here and to demonstrate. Like I told you, there are 33 use cases that we tried some, we failed in some areas, but we are touching every aspect of the bank, right? From HR analytics to different areas. We are experimenting right now. What we see as tangible value is in these 3 areas right now. It's productivity, staff productivity and improvement. But the larger ones for customer. What we have also done, I can share, which we actually went live last month, but the slides, the deck is a little bit updated, is customer contact and personalization. So content creation and personalization. So our ability to communicate to customers with the right set of messages, with a highly personalized tone, is also being now driven largely by large language models. So what we see there is improvement in communication. What I'm not able to measure is still what is the value that it is generating. Yes. So for me, I'm pretty what do I say, pedantic about the value being created. So even if we have nice communication sent to customers in an automated manner, that doesn't excite me. So, so for me, how much of value did it create? How did you measure the value? How much of money did you create out of data? That for me. So probably till we crack that, but we are doing those things.
Okay, okay, glad to know. The one thing I need to mention now, especially since there was a comment about NUS, I know my boss is already reviewing this. NUS is different, NTU is different. We are good at different things. Okay, okay, okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.